There you go.
Okay. 5:39, calling the meeting to order. First, well, technically second item on the agenda is any additions or changes to the agenda. I have none. Does anybody else have anything? No. Okay. Item number 3. Is there anybody here from the public that would like to make a comment on something that's not on the agenda? Seeing none. Moving right along. 4.1, we're looking for review and approval of the meeting minutes from October 5th, which were in your packet. And I would look for a motion to approve. From Gina, and a second from Chris, and all in favor. It passes. Okay. Lisa is not joining us tonight. Chris is going to pinch hit in her absence. Item 5.1 is the initial draft, first draft of the FY23 budget. Chris is going to share his screen. Thankfully, because I did not print out the packet and I don't want to switch between screens.
Yeah, no, it'll be a lot easier if I just have that up there. And yeah, I will be pinch hitting for Lisa, but the work presented here is all hers. I know she's been working very, very hard on this. So let me just share, just give me a moment here, and we'll get this up. Okay.
Jack is giving you all a blow-by-blow of what he's doing in the background, even though you can't hear him. So if I'm laughing, that's why.
Okay, guys, I'm not going to be able to see you, but I want to make sure if you can just tell me that you can see what's on my screen here.
Yes.
Very good. So just kind of a quick run through. The way this has been set up is just to kind of walk people through the sort of the highlights and the budget development considerations as of today, November 2nd. The first draft of our budget, and I want to be very clear, this is our first draft, comes in at just shy of $47 million at 46,941 and change for a 1.27% increase for the BUUSD. Or an increase of $589,000 and change. The CVCC draft 1 budget comes in at just under $3,500,000 for a 4.75% increase, or $158,000 and change. Just to review, and we'll walk through some of the details and highlights of this right now. Just to review the budget development schedule. We are at the bottom of this little section here where it says November. We're at the administration shares draft 1 expense budget. One of the things that I think is very important, and I'm glad we got this in here, is how will this budget align with the strategic plan, our mission, vision, and goals? And I do want to spend a moment to review these, because I think all of this needs to inform all of our discussion going forward in the budget, not just today, but going forward right through town meeting day. And honestly, throughout the year, one of my goals is to be talking about the budget of our school as sort of a story of what is going on in our district and all of our schools. And that isn't something that just happens during budget development season. It's a year-round endeavor, and that it's very important that we do that. So just to review our beliefs, they are that students matter, staff matter, students and staff are invaluable to the community. All students and staff deserve a learning environment that fosters physical and emotional health. Environmental stewardship is a responsibility for all. The delivery of education resources should be student-focused to maintain a culture where every student can achieve. Every student has different needs, and their needs should be met no matter where they are from or which school they attend. And finally, students are most successful when there's mutual respect and active collaboration between students, teachers, parents, and our community. So I think it's really important to set this as the tone of how we approach our work going forward here. And above all else, looking at, and we still have a few more here, but just above all else, looking at our schools not as a burden to our community, but as one of our greatest assets. But just a few others here to finish this up. Educators and families together inspire students to confidently advocate for and design growth experiences that help them define who they are and where they're headed as adults. And educators teach students transferable skills that enable them to become creative and resilient thinkers, to sustain their own sense of purpose and life path, and to balance academic and social emotional growth. And finally, all staff deserve deep investments in training, professional development, and support. So there you have it. Those are our beliefs, and it's important that we revisit our strategic plan whenever we can, and I hope this does inform our discussion. I'll take a quick break there. Does anybody have any questions before I go in further? Okay, I'll continue. Some of the considerations that are going into this first draft, that just to review. I'm not going to read all these to you. I know we can all read, but maybe what I'll slowly do is just go through the screen here so people can have a chance to look at it. Then they can ask any questions they have. We'll just take a minute or so to look at these, okay?
Go ahead, Gina.
Trying to follow the rules. Sorry. Chris, I have a couple of questions, and you might not be able to answer them now. We might need Lisa. But my first is about the tax stabilization fund balance. Somewhere in my brain, there's a niggling memory that the $900,000 actually needs to be reduced by $600,000. Am I making that up, Sarah and Sonia? Or is that, do you remember?
I don't recall it needing to be reduced. Oh, you mean to $600,000?
Well, we applied either, so think it's all even numbers. We applied either 300 or 600,000 to something else. So that tax stabilization fund balance, the 900 is the balance on paper, but there was a reduction for some reason. I'm sorry, I can't remember the details, and I'm.
We'll confirm with Lisa. We did for the FY22 budget, so the school year that we're in right now, we did elect to use 600,000 towards revenue. I'm not sure if this fund balance is prior to that or after. I gotta think it's probably prior until the audit is complete.
Okay.
But we can get Lisa to confirm that.
That I think makes sense, Sarah. Okay, thank you for that.
Any questions we can't? I'm writing all these questions down in case
Chris.
we can't answer them right here.
Perfect. So my other question, and this is it's sort of a broader question, but it's the health premium increase that I'm seeing at 10%. And I'm wondering if things like the premium increase for health insurance, the estimated increase for wages and associated benefits, basically the stuff that we can't control because it's kind of either sort of cost of living increases related to staffing or health insurance premiums that are completely out of control and out of our control. If we could see those numbers as their percent increase of the total budget. The words aren't coming out right, but I know 1.78 looks great. How much of that is the 10% for health premium? How much of that is whatever we've estimated for salaries and so on and so forth? I think having that breakdown is really important. And Chris, I think to your point, going back to the beliefs from the strategic plan, students are important and teachers are important. Students matter and staff matter. And so I'm thinking specifically around, I'm already having the arguments around when people are saying we shouldn't be doing this stuff, but staff matter. We have to have those increases. That's how you retain staff. That's how you respect your staff. And so there's things like that I consider non-negotiable. So sorry, that was droning on and on. I'll stop talking, but I think that would be really helpful data to start having now that we can put out there over and over and over again between now and the budget vote, and start using that as a regular frame of reference for people when we're talking about the budget.
Thank you. I'm going to just scroll down a little bit to see if anybody has any more questions or thoughts.
a good point, but I just want to correct Gina. We're looking at 1.24% increase, not 1.78.
David Delcor, make sure that you write down the right number when you quote my very, very succinct and eloquent statement in the paper.
I'm gonna actually correct one more time, where it's at 1.27. I believe that's right.
Yes. Sorry, my apologies. I can't read tonight.
I can't see the screen, so people can just jump in, or Sarah, you can facilitate people raising their hands.
I got it. I think we're probably going to have some more questions about things that are being added or taken away from the budget. But if we want to just probably get to the hands first, go ahead, Josh.
We'll get to that. So when we look at
sorry.
were there any other questions?
Yeah, there is. Josh Howard has his hand up, and so does Andrea. So Josh, go ahead.
Just in response to what Gina was saying, we're currently in teacher negotiations with the union. I think everything's negotiable. It's on the table. I just want to put that out there.
Okay, I'm just going to respond to Josh just in the fact that while teachers' salaries are negotiable, the health insurance increases is not something we have any control over. It is a statewide contract, and we get the rates from VHI. They've told us at this point to if we put in a 10% increase, that would probably be safe. So.
Right, and I agree with that. You can't. I mean, if it's mandated from a state, that's one thing, but there's other benefits that are negotiable to make up the difference, and maybe that's something we should talk about in negotiations. But to say that nothing's negotiable and just give them everything they want is not really good negotiating. That's just bending over.
Just to clarify, I did not say that nothing is negotiable and we should just give them what they want.
Andrea?
I just wanted clarification for the minutes. Is that 1.2% increase on the cost per pupil or on the overall budget?
That's on the overall budget number.
Thank you.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions about that section, we'll kind of get into the increases themselves.
Sorry, Chris, I'm going to interrupt you one more time because Sonia put her hand up.
Sorry, Sonia, excuse me.
I'm just going to chime in because because we don't have a per pupil increase right now, because we need to wait for the bottom part, the last. I'm sorry. There's the four bullets at the bottom, not the last one on that previous, not that. Yeah, the equalized pupils, the yield, and the CLA. That is still unknown. We won't know that for another month or so, and so we won't know what our per pupil spending, and we won't know what our tax rates are until those things are set or projected. They're not even really set. The yield is projected. That's not even set until the legislature decides to set it sometime later in the spring. So I would just, I know I've said this before and I'm going to keep saying it so people try to understand how our school funding formula works. The equalized pupils haven't been determined yet. They haven't been announced by the AOE, and that will help determine our per pupil spending. So we don't have that number yet.
Thank you. Chris, you can go on now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just pipe in if I'm going too quickly, too slowly, etc. So just looking at the 1.27 figure and that dollar figure of 589 and change. As a district, what's being projected here are potential salary wage increases of 3 to 5%. The health insurance premiums at 10%, as Sarah just described. And there are a few other factors here. Increase to wood chips, heating fuel based on the market value, which is we're seeing in our homes, substantial. We are also, and this is an issue that is happening all over the state, if not the nation, the substitute shortage and just general support staff. We're going to be looking to increase permanent substitute positions across the district. The old model of having daily subs on call is it's no longer viable. And we're looking to have folks on board who will be on staff who can substitute when needed. So, and her last point here is variances to salary benefit lines are based on actuals included in these increased decreases. our teacher salary placements, wages, and benefit plan options. So there's stuff that's in our control. There's stuff that's obviously out of our control too. Question on that district-wide section before I get into the specific schools.
Sonia?
A quick question, because this wasn't included in that. Did we bring the facilities amount back up to $1 per square foot? Do you know if that was increased? Because it's not indicated here.
I do not know that. I do know that Jamie is planning on joining us later.
Okay.
In fact, I'm texting him now, just like I texted Jody the other day, hurry up, because we might be there soon. But I know he's joining us, so just give me a second here.
Okay.
But yes, we can certainly ask him that when he gets here.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Hang on one second. Thank you. And when you get into the specific school potential increases here, they're really very small. In fact, looking at Barry City and Barry Town, pretty much everything that Barry City's considering could potentially be grant funded. We do want to add at Barry City a behavior specialist, and that is actually looks like that'll be coming from the ESSER 2 grant. And we do have an increase in students coming in, and this goes for Spalding as well, into the community who have English language learner needs. So we want to increase that teacher to full-time. We have had a boost in those needs, and we're anticipating that could increase in the region going forward. So there are those. Currently, there are no additions being projected for Barry Town. And then when we get down to Spalding, the big ticket item there, the sole big ticket item is bringing assistant coaches back into the budget. However, instead of just for select assistant coach positions, it's for all of them. One of our issues was that the way our assistant coaches were being paid was not equitable. And we have a formula that we're going to have in place to make sure that anybody who is on our coaching staff is compensated and done so fairly. To do that, we anticipate that will be a figure just shy of $200,000. So we just want to make sure the community knows to do that well and to do it right. That's the figure. And as I said, there are a few other increases being considered for a total of $35,000 there. A long projected need to get a new kiln in the art department. Our annual revitalization of the auditorium at $10,000, and a real need to increase support in the principal office. So just looking at, before I get into C and CVCC, any questions about Barry City, Barry Town, or Spalding?
Chris Parker?
Yeah, one question I have about Barry Town not listing anything is one thing that's come up time and time again is the pistol program that I know community members have been really wondering about that, and that having been cut in the past years. I've also heard people talk about how it's been unfortunate that an equitable program has not existed at Barry City School for that level of literacy intervention. So I'm wondering about that and whether that's been talked about as being, is that a possible thing to put back into the budget? And then my other question is just clarification under Spalding when it says increase to full-time support in principal office, what does that mean? What kind of support is that? Because I would imagine with our admin team, we have full-time folks there in the office. So I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I think, and I'd have to talk to Mrs. Waterhouse about that specifically, but it's for clerical support. I know that there was, we're trying to get the support in all three schools' offices as equitable as possible. And as I understand it, that would bring them up to that point. To your first question, Chris, these intervention positions you're talking about, we are looking to get into our ESSER 3 grant. So that's how we're looking to get those back in. And pistol read in any potentially similar program at Barry City would be part of that. I will say Barry City does have a Renaissance Reader program, but that's an intervention position. So it's basically they we use data to indicate how kids get those services. As far as I understand, Pistol was not, so we're in discussions about how to maybe make that work. But I can certainly get some more information on that and talking to Jen and Erica.
Chris, I would also like some information. From what I understand, Pistol wasn't an intervention, but more of an enrichment program.
Right. It was given to kids during the WIN block, the What I Need block. And so that is still something, though, that I hear time and time again from the community about enrichment services for kids, both A, missing it now from Berrytown, and B, wanting equitable access to that in Berry City.
I agree. And I don't know if we can find out the history on it, because my understanding is that it wasn't cut in this last budget cycle, but it was done prior to that, maybe even the prior year or the year before. So just if we can get some information on that and what it would take to reinstitute it, not only, for the kids who need, reading intervention, but for those who may be doing a little bit better and need some just enrichment. And I agree. Honestly, I remember the Pistol program, I think, started in 1995, and I was actually like in the inaugural class of it. And it was incredibly helpful. I read the same book in 7th grade as I did, sophomore year at Spalding. So I agree that that's something that was a really great benefit for the school. And I wish we could institute it at Berry City as well.
And, I think what you guys are bringing up, and sorry about flying back through, but getting back to what we believe in, all these things, I just want to point out that what you're discussing is consistent with our beliefs in our strategic plan. So just want to note that, gold star to everybody.
Okay.
So we'll bring that up in our further discussions for sure. As I understood it, we were looking at ESSER 3 grants for things like this, but we'll talk further.
Which I would agree with, but I think, it was such a great program that even if we can cover it under ESSER at this point, I would want to see it, brought into our budget going forward. So,
okay.
It looks like we do have more questions. Josh?
Yeah, with all this talk about adding positions, more paid positions, I guess the question I would have is, my understanding is we have about 17 unfilled paraeducator positions on the budget currently. And I guess the first question I would have is, how many of those do you hope to actually fill within a year? I think what's a realistic goal of that? And is it possible saying, like we say, it's like 7 is the best we've ever done, putting 7 on a payroll, getting rid of the other chunk of it. And I guess the other question I would have is, with the dwindling population, the student body, are we going to talk about maybe cutting some staff? It seems like it's not just a COVID thing. It's been going on for about a decade. The way I see it is, any increase in the budget, it's gonna be hard to pass a 0% increase on a budget next year. I think we should all know that. A lot of people feel lied to in Berrytown, and Berry City is about to go through the same thing. And I can already tell we talk about tax rates rather than tax bills. So I think we need to be talking about, can we make some cuts? We can add some positions, but we got to take some away.
Sonia?
I just wanted to, I guess I don't know what the Pistol program is, but I'm going to go back to that. I would like to know more about the Pistol program, and I'd also like to know why it was cut, because I don't recall it. I do remember there being a big discussion about it being cut. That was before we merged. So I'm wondering if it was cut before we were merged, because I don't remember it being cut when we were merged. That is not a recollection of mine. I could be just forgetting it. But I'd like to know why it was cut. Was it because of money, or was it for some other reason? Like the coaches were cut because we were trying to save money, but it also wasn't an equitable distribution of assistant coaching staff across all of the teams. And so it made sense to, kind of start over at square one. And so maybe the idea of Pistol is great and parents really want it back, but we probably should ask for some history about it and not just say we want it back. We should probably understand why. As far as combining schools, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that our student population is decreasing, but unfortunately, it's not. It's probably decreasing across all grades, so it's not really easy to just cut staff and cut teachers. I could make a recommendation that you all would absolutely probably either really cheer for or really want to hang me up to drive for, but we could combine schools. We could have all the elementary kids in one school, and we could have all the middle students in one school, and then that would help us to reduce the number of staff that we need. I'm guessing that's not going to go over as a really big hit. So I think we're going to have to just keep talking about the number of staff that we have.
Chris, I just had one more question about the assistant coaches, and I just want to confirm the numbers, because I think when we went through the third or fourth budget draft, when we cut assistant coaches, we cut a line item that was just, I think it was $18,000.
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay, so we really have that many more assistant coaches that we weren't paying.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
I'm going to move down to special education and the Spalding Educational Alternatives Program, C and CVCC.
Hi, Chris. Before you move on, this is Diane Solomon. I'm sorry, I don't have a way to raise my hand. I just wanted to make a quick comment around the video that you sent out around work-based learning. And that was an awesome video. My son is also enrolled in that and has benefited tremendously. I think that program also had a staffing cut, and I'm wondering if they're looking at shifting around staff to make sure that that program can meet all the students that want to be in it. Thank you.
Diane, I've jotted that question down for Mrs. Waterhouse.
I could chime in if you want me to give you some background on that, because we did reduce that to 1 because of the impact of COVID. And it wasn't because we didn't think we would have the students' interest, but we need to, the director of the program really wanted to rebuild those relationships, because we've kind of been out of the work-based learning, like actually the way that it was envisioned and the way that has been implemented. So I think everyone knows how wonderful that program is, and I think we do want to get it back to what it is, but I think that we were going to have to go through some rebuilding years. I think that was the reasoning behind that cut. It wasn't because we think that we need to cut it. We just weren't able to have students go out into the community because of the pandemic. So I don't know if it's been added back into this budget. That's a good question.
It is a good question.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. I do remember that part of the discussion, but I'm hopeful that next year things are going to look different for the students at the high school with the pandemic, hopefully at that point. So thank you.
Any other questions about Spalding or Berry City, Berrytown?
Josh, you have your hand up. I don't know if it's a holdover though.
Yeah, just a response to Sonia about combining schools. I mean, that is one idea. That's something we can discuss. But we always talk about cutting teachers. When we have over 40 administrators for 250 teachers, it seems like it's a little top heavy administration. Maybe we could look at some of those jobs as well, instead of just threatening teacher jobs all the time.
I just want to be very, very clear. We do not have 40 administrators. There are, between our directors and our building leads, we have 20. There's clerical support and staff, but I just want to be very, very clear. We do not have 40 administrators in this district.
Maybe some of the clerical positions could be looked at as well. It's just a number I got from Renee a while back when I asked how many administrators we had, and that's the number she gave me.
Josh, do you have an idea of what clerical staff or administrator isn't needed?
If I went through it, I could probably make a list by tomorrow if you'd like some.
I welcome all suggestions.
Looking further down at special education.
Chris,
oh, yeah.
Chris, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm so sorry that I'm late. I was at the surgeon. Josh, did you just say that who told you that it was 40?
It was you. It was an email back about 3 or 4 months ago. And I could probably look it up real quick, I guess. And
yeah, I do, because I do not believe I ever said we have 40 administrators in this district.
All right, give me a minute. I'll send it to you.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, thank you. For special education and C, a couple points, and this is very much, it says to be hired.
10 paras, 3 BIs, 2 SLPs. These are 3 areas that are around the United States of America right now, incredibly challenging positions to fill. We are trying to, we do have a current openings of 15, 16, 17 open para positions with no applicants. It's sort of what the situation is. That said, these unfilled positions continue to contribute to real struggles in meeting kids' needs. We're looking to fill as many of these as we can throughout the school year and obviously going into next year, but it's still very much a to be determined situation. But I do want to point out that we are looking into ESSER funding to expand services at C to our 7th and 8th graders. That could include the staff mentioned here, special educator, counselor, a couple support staff, looking at added transportation for those younger kiddos. This is still very much in its nascent development stage, but the plan was to open up the Spalding Education Alternatives Program to some of our younger students. There, I can say from my time at Berry City, there's definitely a need, and hope we can get there. And in terms of the Central Vermont Career Center, I just want to point out what's on here and what led to that 4+% increase. Jody has them on here. I'm not going to be able to speak to too much detail about it, but I'm wondering if anybody has any questions about those 2 topics.
Chris, I do have a question just about the Career Center, and I know that it's going to a vote to basically have its own governance. If that vote passes, the way that funding for that new district would work, does that still come from Berry City and Berry Town, and then tuition from the sending districts until the following year? Do you happen to know the answer to that?
I can't speak to it with great detail. What I do know is that they would essentially be independent of us, and we would be simply a sending school like you described. But I can't speak to it in much more detail than that. Beyond that, I do know the vote is scheduled for town meeting day next year, though.
Sonia, do you have more information on that?
Well, the lease agreement that we looked at the other day, that, because they would still be in our building, we would charge them rent basically.
Right.
And then, so there would still obviously be a different relationship with us versus any of the other schools, just because they are in our building and using our space. And they may also continue to contract with us for, a business manager versus hiring their own or that sort of thing, and then just pay for a percentage of how much is used, and cafeteria services and those sorts of things. But I think the tuition, let's say they eventually have their own building, they may decide to just have their own staff, and we would all just pay tuition, and that would be it. But I think it's probably a much slower process.
Yeah, and that's down the road.
Okay, so but for next year, when we're talking about like this budget, even if it becomes its own district, its own entity, it's still technically being paid by Berry City and Berry Town voters.
The tuition for the students that attend, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the only reason that it goes out to a vote for us is because it's part of our district right now, but eventually it wouldn't be. And the vote we would still vote on it in Berry City and Berry Town, but they'd also vote on it in Berlin and in Worcester and in Waterbury and Calais, and all of the other sending communities would also vote on the budget.
Okay. Chris Parker?
Thanks. Under the special ed C section there, C section, see what I did there? Item number 1, the to be hired. So that's 15 positions. Is that something that has been part of the plan rollout for this program sort of over time, or are those currently open positions, or where are those coming from?
No, the bullet number 1 is not for C. That's for our district for special education. Those are positions that are already budgeted. They're
already empty and they're posted.
Yeah, they're not, and I'm actually questioning why this is even in here, because those are not additions.
Okay.
For,
It does look like that. So that's a note, sort of like, whoa, 15 new positions.
yeah, no.
So maybe that does not belong there or needs a little explanation or something like that.
Yeah, that's why I try to explain these are positions that we currently can't fill that are
Gotcha.
budgeted.
Okay.
And if you look, 2 speech language pathologists, that's a big thing. So we're contracting out for that now. But those positions, people are just not out there. So,
And those are for services that are already in kids' IEPs as part of their plans, and we need to provide them legally. Is that right?
that is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Josh?
Yeah. Well, first things first, I just want to apologize. It wasn't Renee who sent it to me. It was Gina. I just sent it to her. So I apologize. I had the wrong person in mind. I guess as we're talking about SLPs, I have a funny relationship to this whole conversation about hiring them for schools. My wife's an SLP. She's actually the assistant director up at Woodridge currently. And she's been doing SLP for a long time. When we lived up in Derby, she contracted with schools. The schools paid a ton of money. She offered to work at the school, but for a certain amount. And what blocked it from happening is that the money didn't make any sense because the union blocks it. And possibly being able to fill these positions, be able to be competitive and save a ton of money for a school district would be to fix those little issues with the union contracts where SLPs, PTs, OTs can get paid relatively what they're worth in a school setting versus a hospital setting. Maybe that's something to look forward to in the future.
Sonia?
Thanks. This is not a question. I just want to talk about the I know you guys, you probably remember we joined the oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of it, the Student Equity Pupil Weighting Organization. Anyway, there's a task force that's been meeting all summer long from the legislature trying to decide whether they're going to implement the tax weight or the pupil weighting, sorry. And one of the things that the task force is leaning towards right now is using sort of categorical aid to assist with English language learner students. And so that it would have to go through the legislature, and it would have to, obviously, this is just a task force. It's like a made up of different people from different committees, but it would have to go through the whole legislature and be approved. But that would potentially, well, if they just did the weighting, it would help. If they decide to do the categorical aid for the ELL, it would help. Whatever they do, if we are in need of more funding, I think it would help. But I just bring that up because our students in our district are, especially now that you're saying there are students who are, we have more students who need English language learners. They cost more to provide, an equitable education. And so, and we have more students living in poverty, and those students also require more. And that's what the pupil weighting study basically determined. And the legislature is trying to figure out how to implement the pupil weighting study. And it's dicey because some students, some districts are overweighted and some districts are underweighted, and we are an underweighted district. And so if they can figure this out, I think it would really be very helpful for our district. I don't have a lot of hope that it will actually get done because they, to be as politically correct as possible, don't want to, anger the overweighted districts, because they're going to, then their tax rates will go through the roof, whereas ours will go down because we will have more money. So there's a lot of political maneuvering that's happening right now. So anyway, I just share that with you because I don't know how it will impact this budget. It's not going to impact anything that we're discussing as far as budgeting, because it's not going to happen by the time we have to have a budget finalized and go to a vote. But I just bring it up because things may be in the works before this budget on July 1 of 2022 actually gets implemented. So that's why I bring it up, just to kind of keep it in the back of your mind.
Thank you. Any other questions about draft 1 of the FY23 budget? Okay. Oh, David Delcor.
Is there a copy of the draft budget other than the narrative?
We didn't have one in the packets.
I do
I'm
not
not
believe
sure.
so at this
I don't
point.
know if Lisa might be providing one at the board meeting next week.
Okay. All right. And there's nothing in the narrative that, I mean, if coach's salary, assistant coach's salary is going up $200,000 and you're banking on a 10% increase in health insurance and you're looking at a 3 to 5% increase for teacher salaries. And how does that all fit within a $580-ish thousand increase to keep it at 1.27%, unless something else is going down and I just don't know what that something is.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what Gina was speaking to earlier. If we could kind of get some numbers as to, if we're looking at a 10% projected health insurance increase, can we see what that number actually is? So Chris, Lisa apologizes she wasn't able to be here tonight, but I think Chris has written these questions down. He's going to take them to Lisa and hopefully we can get some more clarifications when I think this draft is going to be presented to the full board on the 11th. Andrea?
Yeah, I just want to go on record regarding substitutes. Every employee within the district gets increases every year. This is year 5 with no increase for substitutes. So with no increases in 5 years, and minimum wage has already gone up well over $2 in that time frame, it is not surprising that it is difficult to find substitutes. Folks can get paid more being checkout clerks. You can go just about anywhere right now and make more than substitutes. So I think it's time that the district start looking into how they're paying their daily substitutes, including it was in the policy that the pay could be increased for those with longevity. I will be honest, I have worked for over a decade and have a lot of experience. And I get paid the same amount as someone who walks in off the street, which is the same amount that I've been making for 5 years. And so people are going to other districts. You have to know that because their wages are just higher. And I don't think we're showing that we value our substitutes when only time we give increases as when we hit absolute rock bottom. And I think financially, with what you pay for full-time substitutes, and I have done that before, between that and the benefits, it might be advantageous to just raise your day sub rate some, which would make it so that you don't have to pay as much for as many full-time substitutes.
Thank you, Andrea. Sonia?
Andrea, thanks for that. Chris, can we have a discussion about sub wages out, like maybe on the next agenda? I have to finalize the next agenda, but outside of this budget conversation, and then make sure if we decide that we want to increase it, because I don't want to just have it and talk about it for next year, because if we're really facing a shortage and we're scrambling for subs, and if what Andrea's saying is true, then why are we not addressing it? So I think we need to do something about it before next year's budget.
I don't disagree. I know that even districts that are paying, relatively much higher for substitutes are still struggling getting them. I'm not saying that should preclude us from increasing it. I think to Andrea's point, that does need to happen, but it is all of these types of positions, everybody is struggling filling them right now, just so we know.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Andre. That's a very good point. And I would recommend that the administration take a look at that. Not as Sonia said, not only within next year's budget, but if we can do something about that while I know the sub coordinator at Berry City is struggling daily trying to fill spots in Berrytown as well. Renee?
Sorry, I'm still catching up. What is the current salary for subs?
It is just under $15 per hour. So it's paid by the hour, which for a full day comes up to about $105 a day.
It's
Okay,
actually
thank you.
14 an hour, Chris. It's 14 an hour.
Okay, I
I
thought it
have
was
not- I
13.75.
No, it's 14. If it's more, I have not been advised.
Okay, so it's an hourly rate versus
It's an hourly
a
rate.
day pay. Okay,
But for a
thank
full
you.
day comes out to about $105.
Okay, thank you.
Josh, did you have a comment or question about that?
Yeah, just are there any benefits that go along with being a sub? If there are, what are the costs of that?
Not a daily sub, no.
Okay. I think that concludes our discussion of the FY23. Like I said, I believe Lisa is planning on presenting this at the full board meeting next week. I'm honestly, I'm not going to be at that meeting, so I hope that Chris can get this list of questions to her, and hopefully we can get some clarifications and some answers to those at that point. Before we wrap that up, does anybody have any other suggestions or things that they would like, that they expected to see within the next year's budget that aren't there, or other questions? Chris, I am just going to make one note because I told everybody that I would keep asking. I'm assuming that any of the positions that are grant funded in this current year that are being brought into the next year are still being grant funded next year, and we're not adding those positions. Otherwise, they'd be listed here.
Otherwise, they would be listed here, so that is correct.
Okay. Josh?
Yeah, I guess my suggestion would be is we got to kind of go back and see what else we can save off of that thing. We got to cut that to zero or under. I mean, Berry City is going to suffer the same fate that Berry Town did this year with the appraisals coming up. And you guys already used up the tax rate excuse and everyone's bills went up. So I think we got to do better. I think we just got to get more creative and look at every avenue where we can save money and still be able to teach kids properly.
Okay. Well, just to respond to that, from my understanding, like I said, we can only do what we can do, but the tax rate in Berrytown actually went down. So if we're, going to see that same fate in Berry City, I would welcome that. Sonia?
I mean, the tax rate went down, but the tax bills went up, just like I was saying all along. So talk about
we
tax
don't
rates
have control
going-
over the value of your property.
But to sell a tax rate going down, like your bill's going to go down, is just being misleading and dishonest. And that's why so many people are really upset right now. They feel lied to. And
Sonia, go ahead.
They're kind of right.
So I just wanted to thank the administration for 1 point, what are we at? Sorry, I've lost
1.27, Sonia.
1.27. I think this is one of the lowest increases on a first draft that I've ever seen. So I appreciate that. I recognize that school funding is really complicated and really hard to understand. And then when you throw in a reappraisal, it makes it even more difficult. So I understand that. But I do think that for people to understand how this is going to impact their pocketbook, we have to wait for equalized pupil, the yield projection, and the CLA. Those are the three things that we need to wait for you to understand how 1.27% is going to impact you. And I think for the record, I don't think everyone's tax bills went up. I think, according to the Times Argus, which is a very reputable news source, they said that a third were going to be reduced, a third of the tax bills in Berrytown were going to stay the same, and a third were going to go up. So I wouldn't say across the board, unless the Times Argus was incorrect, that every single tax bill went up.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to item 5.2, which is the current year's FY22 expense report. It's in your packet. Because it is still really early in the year, Lisa has kind of elected not to put a line by line item just because it doesn't really mean a whole lot when we're still in October, November. As you can see right now, the year-end projections, which are usually fairly conservative, is showing a surplus of about $200,000. As Lisa explained Chris confirmed in prior meetings, that's primarily related to unfilled positions, jobs that are still posted, we're still hoping to fill. And that, you know, it's like, as Gina, I think, had mentioned, it's not necessarily a good thing. Any questions on that? No. Okay.
Hi, this is Diane. I'm sorry to do this from my phone and
That's
just
okay. Hi,
jump in
Diane.
randomly. Just two things. One, I'm curious about kind of what will happen if we continue to have these unfilled positions. What will happen to the money? And then number two, I just want to say that this is a really difficult year to be a teacher and to work in the schools. And I understand the hard work the administrators have put in, and I understand the hard work that school staff do day in and day out. And from my perspective, the best way to provide social emotional support to students is small class sizes. So I know it's a little bit later in the discussion around cutting teachers, but it's really, really difficult for students and teachers to work in these conditions right now. And so I just wanted to put that other perspective in there for this discussion and for folks to consider as we reflect back on the vision that small class sizes actually really enhance students' learning and their social emotional development. Thanks.
Thank you, Diane. I don't know that I can necessarily answer your questions about what happens if we never fill these positions. I can tell you as far as what happens with the money, it just remains a surplus in the budget. And, you know, that happens some years we're in a deficit, some years we're in a surplus. And it's not normally in the millions of dollars. So it's not normally such a large, confusing aspect when we get to the end of the year. But I think at this point, we're still hoping that we're going to be able to fill some of these positions. So it's a little premature to kind of talk about what the surplus means at this point, and it's really more for informational purposes. But it is something we will continue to track throughout the year. Moving on, item 5.3 is the FY21 audit update. And Lisa's not here. I can say that I know that the audit staff has been in central office doing audit work. I'm pretty sure they're probably at this point wrapping up the audit. It will be presented to the board at one of our December meetings, formally presented the audit report. And to the best of my knowledge, they have not had any adverse findings or material misstatements or anything like that at this point. If I'm wrong, Lisa will correct us next week.
You are not wrong.
Okay. Item 5.4, we still don't have Jamie, do we?
Yeah, I don't know if Jamie's coming, but I'm prepared to speak to most of this.
Okay. In that case, so item 5.4 is the American Rescue Plan ESSER funds. There is some information in the packet, but Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Would it be helpful if I share the screen and go through that again? Do people have access to that material? Because I will.
If you want to share it, that's fine with me. I like reading along.
Okay. I'm going to need to pull this up, so just give me a second, please. I just have to zoom it out so we can all see, because I just pulled out of it. So just give me a moment. Okay. Okay, here we go. And you do have to forgive me. My understanding was that Jamie was going to be joining us to get sort of into some of the nuts and bolts of this. But this is just sort of the conceptual applications that we've been submitted for ESSER for specifically around HVAC work. You know, the projected numbers are in the range of $3,400,000 for Spalding with the HVAC upgrades, potential for the sprinkler project, Berry City and Berry Town upgrades. Berry Cities would be 1.5 and Berry Town would be 1 million. So this is just to review, when we had our community forum in late August, HVAC upgrades were a very big part of what the recommendations were from both the administration, the district, and from the community itself. So we really want to use a good chunk of these funds, which is just, I think, just under $11 million total to upgrade our HVAC systems. So I don't know if folks got a chance to look at this. If you have specific questions, I will do my best to answer them. And certainly give people a chance to review the document right here.
I can tell you just from the notes Lisa sent us before the meeting that the Spalding HVAC and sprinkler system has been the application has been submitted. They're waiting on a little bit more information for both Berry City and Berry Town, but those applications should be in by the end of the week.
Yeah, so again, to just review there, the idea, and I know this has been talked about a lot, is that will the HVAC upgrades at Spalding kick in this requirement that we have to fully sprinkle the whole school, which is currently about 40% sprinkled now. The hope is that if that does kick that in, that we can use ESSER funds to take care of the sprinkler upgrades. That we're still, as Sarah said, waiting to find out about that.
Anybody have questions or comments on that? No? Okay. Oh, Josh?
Do you know roughly when you might find out when that's approved or not approved?
We are waiting now and hoping for within a week, but it's you know, I know the request has been submitted. We're just waiting to hear. There's a lot of very similar requests coming at the AOE for sure on this stuff. So we're just waiting to make sure we're complying and doing it right.
Okay. So maybe we will have more information on that by the next board meeting too. Okay. In that case, I'm going to move on, and I think Jamie was supposed to speak on this one too. I don't know how much information you have on it, Chris. The Vermont Green Schools Initiative, it's item 5.5, and it has to do with, forgive me, I'm not necessarily up to speed on this, but it's a required water something. Sorry.
Yeah.
Stormwater permitting.
It's basically around putting together a green, as you can see in the document right here. It's basically an initiative, Vermont Green Schools Initiative, and it's going to help impacted schools access funding to pay for green stormwater infrastructure design. So we're looking to see what we're going to qualify for with this, and we just wanted to share with you, what the process is. We're fully enrolling in it to see what we qualify for, and it's a long-term process. You can see by the initiative timeline. So we're basically getting all this material, the submissions in now, and then hope to have an idea by the winter and spring what we qualify for. So just wanted to make sure the board was up to date on that.
Sonia, do you have more information or questions?
Yeah, no, I just have some more info. There's a new 3-acre permit requirements for stormwater, and if you have 3 acres or more of impervious surfaces, meaning your paved parking lot and roof, you fall into the category that you need to have some specific stormwater infrastructure. And Berry Town did a study with Friends of the Winooski, I believe. They worked with them, and then we merged into one district. So I think if Jamie was here, he could probably speak to that. I don't know if going through this Vermont Green Schools Initiative with Green Print Partners, like sort of just takes that plan and rolls it in, or if they say, hey, wait a minute, we can do it a different way. I don't know how that works. So that would be one of my questions for Jamie, because I remember Victoria Pompey asking lots of questions about the plan that they brought to Berry Town. And I mean, it came to the full board once we had merged, but it was like I only knew like a very little bit about it because it had all happened at the Berry Town board, and then we sort of got the tail end of it. But anyway, I'm glad to see that there's someone that's going to help with the design and permitting, because it is a really big deal and something that we're required to do. So it's great that there's someone that's going to help us do it.
And it'll obviously help with the funding as well. So that's really important.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm remembering we did discuss this, I think, maybe at the beginning of summer in a facilities meeting. I wasn't sure if it was actually, at one point I thought we were going to see if we couldn't get a waiver, and that maybe the fine or whatever we would have to pay was actually going to be cheaper. But I do have some notes. Jamie was, I think, supposed to talk on this, but Lisa says that this grant is for both design and construction phase. Jamie was going to confirm an estimate, but it could potentially save the district about $2 million. So hopefully we'll get some more information on that, but all good news. Go ahead, Sonia.
So reading through the frequently asked questions, I thought that it was just for the phase 1, which was the proposals and the engineering, the design and permitting, and it wasn't for construction. I thought the grant was just for that. But under the pages aren't numbered, but it says vendors. What if I had a grant for design in the past? Can I use that design and apply for a construction grant? But there's no phase 2 grant funding yet. So maybe that will come along after, because obviously that's later. That's like 2022, 2023. So.
Right. Yeah. I'm just, Lisa had sent me some notes when she wasn't going to be here, and she mentioned construction phase 2. So maybe this is just the information we have now and we're expecting it, but
yeah.
Andrea, do you know more than us?
Well, I was there for all of those meetings at Berry Town, yes, and I'm going back in the memory banks. But Friends of the Winooski had approached the school, and they had come up with the money to do some preliminary work. And then I'm thinking there was also grant money where they did more intensive designs, and it was at the point where they were hoping to find grant money for the actual construction of a project. And then the next phase for Berry City and Spalding was that there were going to have to be engineering studies to determine if it was feasible to put something on the properties. So I think perhaps maybe we were looking for more grant money if possible. I know Jamie had talked about, utilizing engineers to do the portion for the feasibility study as to whether or not we could even do it. And his concern was long-term maintenance that might have to be performed, dredging out, water holding areas, water holding retention ponds. So he was concerned with long-term maintenance and preferred to do the waiver if possible. But I think it's already been proved by the engineers that it is feasible, at least at Berry Town, because they already did all the work. And there was an area located where it could possibly be located.
Okay. Thank you. What you're saying is sounding familiar. There is a facilities meeting is coming Monday, so I'll be certain to kind of bring that up and maybe ask some questions. It doesn't look like it's on the agenda, but I think it's probably relevant. Any other questions on that that I probably can't answer, but can bring to Jamie? No? Okay. I don't have any old business or other business unless there's anything from anyone else. I know we gave Chris a large list of questions.
I'll make sure Lisa gets those. I would like to just acknowledge Diane Solomon's point about how challenging it is working for all of our staff working in schools right now. I honestly think, and I'm having these discussions with my fellow superintendent colleagues, we're all going to have to learn how to work with less. There's no doubt about it. We're going to have to be leaner and really make sure that we focus on retention of our folks. And that's sort of the approach that we're taking here. When I think about some of these unfilled positions, the fear around the state is that this isn't going to get any better. So we've really got to build capacity from within, and so that we can really acknowledge what Diane was just stating, that schools are facing everywhere right now. I think it's important that she brought that up, and it is informing our decisions, no doubt.
Thank you. And absolutely. Everybody I've spoken to, as I mentioned last week, everybody's at capacity, but they're still showing up every day. They're trying their best. And
that is correct.
we're all trying to do everything we can for the kids. And hopefully the staff as well. Okay, so items for our next agenda, we will, I'm guessing, look at the FY23 budget again. We'll look at the FY22 expenses again, because it is so early in the year. This will probably just be a preliminary update. We may discuss the ESSER grant. I'm going to check with Lisa because that may end up going to the full board meeting prior. So Andrea, just for now, for future agenda items, I'm just looking at FY23 budget, FY22 expenses. We can put FY21 audit update, just because we may not have that at the board meeting before finance. Anything else anybody believes should be put on the agenda?
Did you want to add back in like the Vermont Green Schools Initiative to see if Jamie could attend and give additional information, or do you just want to put that to bed for now?
I'm gonna hold on that until I can talk with him at the the facilities meeting on Monday.
Do you want it in the parking lot?
Actually, yes. Yeah, let's put that there. Sorry. Let's do the ARP ESSER conceptual applications in the parking lot too. Chris Parker.
Thanks. Is there any discussion that we need to have at this committee about the policy related to board approval and related to the bid law, or are we just going to keep that at the full board level?
I believe well, it's kind of hard for finance to talk about setting policy.
No, not to set the policy. So the policy committee already did the piece of what our recommendations were, but the piece that came up, I think, at the full board meeting was around the comfort around the dollar sort of amount, and I didn't know if there was any discussion to be had around that with this committee about finance, or if we should just keep it at the full board level.
Because it's kind of been fully discussed at the board, and I think Lisa was going to talk about some writing change related to what actually qualifies as something to be brought before the board. I think we kind of discussed, is it supposed to be just facilities related, or are we signing off on every textbook? I think it's probably best we can wait for Lisa I think she was going to draft some language after checking the model policy and discussing maybe with Pietro or somebody. So I think it's probably best, because it's been a full board discussion, we could probably bring that back there. Hopefully we'll have something that's doesn't require as much discussion. I know you guys
Yeah.
are really sick of that policy.
Well,
And
it's
we've got it.
complicated because it's a policy that's sort of facilities, finance, and policy committee
Yeah.
all related. So I think
Yes.
that's part of the confusion, is just that the right people might not have been at all the tables for all the discussions. So I just want to
Right.
make sure going forward, like if we're saying like full board, Lisa will bring it to discuss, then that's fine with me.
Yeah,
I
I
just
think,
wanna-
I know we have a lot of stuff to discuss at the full board, but because it was kind of
Brought
dug into
there.
deep there, we might
Yeah.
as well just bring it back there, I think.
Okay. All right. That's fine.
Because
Thank
otherwise
you.
we're going to talk about it here and then we're going to bring it back there anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Chris,
Thank
if I
you.
can just add, Luke Ather and I are connecting tomorrow afternoon, and that was on our agenda as well, to just kind of help Lisa with that. And just so
Okay.
you know.
Okay, great. Thank you.
okay. There's nothing else. Our next meeting is Tuesday, December 7th at 5:30, which is Pearl Harbor Day. And if there's nothing else, I would look for a motion to adjourn. Which comes from Gina.
And I'll second.
Second from Chris. All in favor? Everybody. Okay, we are adjourned at 6:50 p.m. Thank you everybody for